it is very important to be liquid. Once you are an exchange, the liquidity has to be guaranteed. That's the the mechanism which with the exchange and the market players or the market participant has to evolve to give credibility to the exchange.
So does it change? Is it okay in its present form, or do you think it needs to be tweaked?
I think it is absolutely it's okay in the current form, the way it has been shaped up in the rules.
Because the general belief is, and maybe Shripal you can talk about it, is that a lot of merchant bankers are not comfortable because you really don't know what's going to happen. Forget 3 years down the line. You don't know what's going to happen 1.5 years down the line.
The main problem is 3 years. See, if a market is going to be made in a particular stock, it can be made in 6 to 8 months. And if a market is not going to be made despite doing market making for 6 to 8 months, then it's never going to be made. So the 3 year is the reason when you ask me why so many merchant bankers have not come ahead. Because I cannot trust Greece for 3 years. So how can I trust an SME?
Absolutely. And the nature of the SME is that the business is in itself, far riskier. So what about costs of raising funds? You spoke about the fact that you can raise money in 3 months. Right. What's the cost differential in coming to an SME exchange to raise the money as opposed to alternate modes of funding?
Percentage-wise, costs are high because you're raising smaller amount of money. So in that sense, the costs are very similar between the main board and the small board. Only thing is in the SME exchange there's an additional cost of market making, so which the company will have to bear. And since the timing is less, so that your merchant banking costs go down.
You mean the company has to bear the cost of
right, the company will pay the market maker a particular fee.
So that's the extra cost that you
And similarly you'll save money on printing, you'll save money on the other particulars because you're not doing a larger issue. So when you do a main board issue, there are so many expenses which are total waste of everybody's money, I mean, I can give you a statistic that every issue which hit the market in the last 2 years spent 1.5 crore rupees on printing and postage. Purely paper. It's not required. Why? Because you have to target 1,000 shareholders. Now you have to target 50 shareholders. You don't need to print so many. Plus over time we've moved to e-application also this year. So the costs are down in the right place and costs are up in the right place. I can say that.
Okay. Just staying with the question of costs, Deepak, you brought out this point that the venture capitalist funding that an SME often taps into actually is more expensive than maybe coming to an exchange and trying to raise money from public or maybe friends or from a smaller group of investors. How does that math work?
Okay, so just to put things in perspective, if you look at any company when it wants to access funding from a private equity or from a venture capitalist, I think the positioning is completely different, right? The venture capitalist is actually coming in as a business partner. Right, so anybody who comes in at that level extracts a pound of flesh. Okay, so the term sheet which is essentially signed between an investor and the company talks about a minimum, let's say a guaranteed rate of return year on year. Right, so in that sense, I think the cost of raising something from a venture capitalist is always higher as compared to when you actually go and access funds from the market, because when you go directly to the market, there are no frills attached to it. Right, you make your own decision. And you've got the ability to raise funds, and there is no time limit within which you need to raise funds and stuff like that.
And Chetas, you were talking about the fact that a company needs to really know what type of funding that it needs to go for, whether it needs to go for debt funding.
And when. So when you talk about venture capitalist and it being more expensive source of capital vis-a-vis a listed situation, I'm saying you go to a venture capitalist or private equity when you believe that you can't raise money on the listed stock. Or this is not the time when I want to go because there are few risks that I really would believe somebody else understands on a one-to-one basis. He'll be able to support me and will enhance the value and then go to the public market. And that is the way venture capitalists have been playing a role. And that is why they always said that I'm going to add value. I understand better. I know that there is more risk to it, and to that extent, I give you lower valuation, and so it becomes an expensive proposition. When you go to the listed entity, I believe that what he was also talking about, market making being a difficult thing for 3 years, I think it's a very unique phenomenon that has come in to put responsibilities to merchant bankers within the community itself. There's a hard underwriting of 100% of the issue. Now what that means is that the merchant banker has to spend time and understand what that company is about and not just prepare the regulatory paperwork. And not say that the investor, beware, let him understand what I am telling him. If he believes it's good, let it be. Now here the merchant banker has to say, I believe in this story. I have done my work, I believe in the promoter, and my money is going to be at stake also, so you guys put in more money.
But just one question on this underwriting. How is it done globally? Is the entire issue usually underwritten?
So it varies from exchange to exchange. Okay, so if you actually look at how it's all started off, I mean who's at the center. I mean today we need to look at that. So why is this SME exchange coming? Okay, so one is the SMEs themselves are going to benefit, but eventually who's it for? It is for the investor. Okay, so any right-thinking exchange would devise rules for the investor. Okay, and that's how other exchanges have evolved as well. Okay, now if you look globally at what rules on underwriting exist for different SMEs, they vary from one country to another country, right? So the percentage of underwriting, in fact, actually moves. Okay, so some exchanges may say there is no underwriting required. For example, AIM doesn't talk about an underwriting requirement at all because the exchange has evolved so much, right? London was one of the foremost exchanges to come out with this. NASDAQ doesn't talk about an underwriting requirement. But some of the smaller ones, now if you look at something in Brazil, okay, so that's very similar in terms of cultures, in terms of how Brazil is moving, you can actually mirror that with India. So they have got some requirements which are similar to what India is trying to do, right? So I understand that when SME exchange was in a phase where they were thinking of what needs to be done, they've actually gone out and studied some of these global exchanges, and that's how the rules have evolved here. So the best of all the exchanges have been taken here and they've imbibed.
And they're market makers as well.
Yeah, they're market makers as well. That's right.
Well, I think the mandate is fairly clear, though it's a challenging task for our investment bankers. They need to do their homework very well, but concept is, I think, absolutely ripe, and the timing for it couldn't have been better because this is the time when you are seeing huge ramp up in terms of business that SMEs are doing at this point of time, and it will be a good mechanism, a good pricing mechanism, not just for them, but also trying to price their funding for alternate modes of funding for the SME. So it's going to really, provide the answer to a big need for the SME at this point of time. And how it progresses, of course, we'll see a lot of regulatory, the regulatory environment in which it's working is constantly changing. So it will be molded depending upon the needs of the exchange. So I think with that, I'd like to thank my panelists.